There is a reason people earnestly recommend against entertaining dark presences or paranormal powers, right? And, I can not only speak from my familiarity with what is articulated within the Christian faith about said supernatural powers and perhaps their basis and why we should abstain from conversing with them, but also from my familiarity of horror projects. It never works out well for the characters that try it. And that seems to be the lesson that the characters of the Reaper Man are going to learn the hard way. No. I mean, it's amusing for us, especially in fare like this. I don't know how potent this is of a release, though it does have that strong plot thread that is very reminiscent to other works, or perhaps we've seen the entertainment of dark powers, and it goes horribly wrong, right? That's sort of, again, a familiar threshold to set, but it is a smaller release from my understanding, coming out of, and I forget the name at the moment, Misguided Perceptions. I think it's Media Group. I think it's their official name. Yes, they're behind the production. And then Gravitas Ventures, who I've checked out a lot actually on this channel from some of their entertainment offerings. They're, I believe, distributing the work. I believe. So I'm not familiar with Misguided's efforts here, but Gravitas I am to some extent, even though the picture quality might vary wildly. If you're familiar with some of their other releases, it makes sense why there's a bit of a diversity in respect to quality or final efficacy of the presentation. But I'm very curious to engage with this. Again, I try to keep an open door for independent fare. And though I am much more a thriller guy than I am horror, I like the atmosphere of a horror movie quite generally. I like a scary picture, especially one with an invigorating story, and hopefully, even though it's a bit conventional, I would say on its threshold basis, The Reaper Man is that. If you want a more thorough definition of what this film is going to be articulating in plot, this is the official IMDb synopsis. A grieving wife summons a dark spirit with an insatiable desire for revenge. I wonder who the dark spirit is. Is it like a man or something? And like I think this character, if I'm judging by the poster, she's married or she's in a relationship. It's just like a male presence that comes back and suddenly it's like, I'm going to disrupt your marriage and I'm going to get in there. Or something from her past, maybe a trauma thread. I don't know. This could go a variety of ways. But I'm curious. I mean, again, like I said, baseline foundation that presents a familiarity to other works. Let's see what The Reaper Man offers from a good look at it with both a teaser and a trailer in that order. I'll start with a teaser, which is shorter, a little under a minute. But we'll get an introductory perspective here. All right, hang on. Let's take a look at this.
Do you believe in the supernatural?
I did read that Jaron Lockridge has an extensive filmography, so I'm not sure how much of it is horror, but he's done a lot of cinematic work in, I believe, the independent sphere, from what I saw. I'm assuming this is after encountering said dark power.
Time to atone.
Well, I like the line. It doesn't come across to me as stale. I mean, I don't hear the word tone that often. Maybe in some respects of film marketing, but not necessarily in the lines. Well, independent fare works with what they have. I don't say this as a diss. If I, again, consult a wide variety for those of you perhaps unfamiliarized to my work. I look at a lot of pictures in the larger commercial space, although I try and keep it, again, a wide perspective of what's going on in the smaller landscape as well, because I do respect indie work. Oftentimes you find a quality and efficacy that isn't necessarily offered in commercial fare, or it's artistic work with a freedom of constraint. The project here, though again, I was going to say the introduction to it, it does appear filmed in familiarity to what I've seen as an independent release. And I'm wondering, are we going to see the dark presence, or is that sort of going to be, well, we're going to work with the last bit of funding we have to manifest that? It seems that this guy is. So maybe I was wrong in that this, because I believe it's a man in the poster. Yes. So I'm guessing he's the dark presence. Maybe he's possessed by it, I don't know. But maybe she's not married or in a relationship, or maybe this is a lover of the past that she's encountered before, and there's some backstory to it. I'm not exactly sure again what to interpret. I think the materialization of it makes sense. You've got a guy here, imposing presence, black suit, looks kind of dark and shady, and enough of a head tilt to be like, okay, yeah, there's something eerie. They're working with what they have, but I think as a baseline, it's pretty good. It's sufficient enough. That's the teaser. This is a more extensive look. The official trailer, which I believe debuted today. Alright.
You don't have to face anything alone till death do us part.
So it seems she was in a relationship.
Death ain't even that strong.
You have an aura of deep sorrow surrounding you. You're a widow.
Do you believe in the supernatural?
Well, I do, but I don't necessarily believe you should entertain the dark side of it.
Evil every day. But if you're talking about demons and ghosts, I can't say I do.
That'll change. It's sufficiently presented, as I said. It's got a good framework to work with here.
I need you to undo whatever it is that you've done. What is there to undo?
It doesn't work that way.
Okay, he's come back, but he's killing people. I need you to stop it and make him go away.
Okay, that was good. Oh, I like how you see him in the mirror. Good idea. It's softer on articulation, than I thought it would be in terms of the music choice. It's okay, though. Careful what you wish for. I'd say that in respect to both parties, not only the woman, who understandably, is in the process of grieving. And this is a thread I've seen before in other stories. I forget maybe specific examples at the moment, but it's a familiar plot to investigate. You have a grieving widow, misses their partner or husband or whatever, and wants in some way to return to a state of normalcy of that time past. And maybe it's a very understandable departure. I don't think they explained it. Reason for the death. It might have been cancer. It might be, something else. Maybe he was murdered. I don't know. But she's in a state of grief, and where does she look? She looks for solutions to perhaps to quell that misery, at least for a time, to return to a state of comfortability, while still, I'm sure, be in a lifelong grieving mode. Now, unfortunately, she takes the route of a supernatural. And so perhaps for both of these women, not only for the victim in said circumstance, but for the practitioner of the dark powers, which, was she reading, again, I think there's enough setup here to sufficiently manifest that role. Was she reading tarot cards? Again, like I said, easy lesson of life if you ever watched a horror movie, or if you're coming from perspective again as a Christian, perhaps you look at that element, you're like, well, I have thought or two. I get it. It's establishment for the story, and, we're trying to get a good idea and representation for the character here. You don't mess with the dark powers. Right? Because you never know what you might get. In some cases, you might revive your long-lost love, but he might be a murderer. Because something else is there. It might not be him. I think, again, when I watch this, it's sufficiently presented. It's clearly, very visible to see that it is an independent movie. Again, not trying to throw shade, but they're working in the limitations of what they have in terms of resources. This isn't a prestigious project from a multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar Hollywood outlet. I think what I'm seeing here is crafted pretty well. I also really like that jump scare. Positioning, what it could have been, and I was wondering if this would be the case, is it like, you're going to see this woman here in the focal shot, but is the camera going to turn away, and then it's going to be like there's nothing in the background, that it turns back and he's standing behind her or something like that. That's a mechanism I've seen employed. Again, like I said, never cinematic ventures. This definitely has connections to other work. But they put him in the mirror. Good idea. And then they didn't, I like how they did this too, that it's so abrupt. That feels very different to me. Because normally it would be, well, we see him in the mirror, and then maybe the camera turns back to her, and then the camera goes that way, and then it darts back, and then he'll be in frame, like behind her or in front of her or something. In this case, it was very swift. Like, we see him in the mirror, and suddenly, zoop, it flips over, and there's the guy, with, it looks like black eye makeup? I'm not exactly sure. It's hard to tell from here. we'll see the final state of the movie if we choose to watch it. Because I believe its release is a little later. I'm covering this early. Of its release date, April 18th is when it releases. I'm not sure exactly where yet. I would imagine maybe at some streaming services, probably Tubi or Freevee or something like that. I don't know exactly. Maybe one of the other ones you have to pay an access fee for. But I think, in terms of a judgment of an independent film that perhaps feels familiar in some of its plot threads, it's nicely materialized. I think they're working well with what's at their disposal. What are your guys' thoughts of the Reaper Man? I'd love to hear down below if you wish to disclose your perspective. Like I said, traditional elements here to other types of work along the unsuspecting of the consequences human translates their grief into diving into the supernatural world, right? And learning the hard way. Though it rings a bell to many other projects, I think there are points of strength here that I admire. How do I say this? It doesn't feel... Well, in some ways it feels, again, like a lot of our indie fare, it might feel stifled in presentation because of the limitation to access of resources, but I think what they're working with and how they tailor it to the film and the manifestation of the plot, I think is effective enough to create a sustained, horrifying experience. I'm going to see how strong it is. I'm not exactly sure on that note alone. We'll best judge that when the film comes out. But I think for what I'm seeing right now, it looks good. It's got a good baseline. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.